Welcome to the Creative Push, an intimate and diverse artist interview series. Here, artists and makers of all kinds share tips, advice, knowledge, and inspiration that you can learn from. I'm your host, Sherry O'Neill, a photographer, artist, writer, and educator. This series is a part of the Learn and Create platform to help artists further their education in creativity, art, and business. Today's interview is with Ken Means. He is a master woodcarver, a painter, a bronze artist, and one of the few authentic Indian mask carvers around. His career spans more than 60 years, beginning in California, where he hand-painted billboard murals and backdrops. With no formal training, Ken is a self-trained artist who has spent his life as a master carver and painter.
Welcome to the Creative Push. My name is Ken Means. I'm a woodcarver, amongst other things. I paint, I sculpt, I carve.
How did you get started? What was your childhood like? Were you into art?
Copying cartoons to get some skills going. In those days, there wasn't plastic models, there were wooden models. And I used to build model airplanes. All the models I built were wood. I'd started drawing and then I was building models. By the time I got into high school, I took one semester of art, and I didn't do well. I didn't either get along with the teacher, or I was too far out in left field someplace. Well, I continued to work, refining my drawing. I drew all through high school, all through grammar school, and all through middle school. Probably 9 years straight, I would draw all the time. When I got out of high school, decided I wanted to learn to paint. Laguna every year has this great art thing for about 2 weeks. People come from all over the world, and I was impressed with the paintings, what they were selling for, and I said, well, I think I could do that. So for my birthday, my folks bought me about 5 or 6 tubes of oils and 3 brushes, and I started painting at about 19 or 20. I painted furiously day after day for a couple of years. I used to get my paints, because I didn't have any money, from a guy that painted cars, and he would advertise on television, I'll paint any car, any color for $29.95, and he would do it in one day. Well, at the end of every day, whatever colors he used on the cars, he would throw the empty cans of paint. They were gallon cans. There's no paint left in them, but there was always a residue on the bottom. So I started collecting those and emptying them into jars, and I had all this array of all these different colors, but I had no money for canvases. So I used to cut up cardboard boxes and paint on the cardboard boxes. I did that for about a year and a half to teach myself to paint. And then I got a job with a billboard company. I hated lettering, and that's where you start. But I learned how to pounce. I learned how to do patterns. I learned a whole heck of a lot of stuff. In those days, all the billboards were painted in oils. Acrylics had just come out, but acrylics do not hold up to the weather. Oils will hold up 3 times longer than anything. I don't think that anybody's hand painting billboards anymore. In those days, they were actually hand painted in huge studios. I had a studio in El Monte called M Art Studios. I did work for Knott's Berry Farm. I did work for Pasadena Playhouse, 40 Sands Hotel, backdrops for their shows.
And then you got into teaching, right?
Right, because I was a professional and I was making a living at it, and my name had gotten out fairly well. First Governor Brown, the old man, wanted professionals to work as teachers and teach your profession. He was offering accreditation to get teaching credentials. And there was a dean at Pasadena City College that I knew. And he says, I want you to sign up for this. And I told him, no, I'm not a teacher. I'm not educated. He says, you don't have to be. Just go through the steps and come and work for us. So I did that. I went to UCLA. I took 2 courses, one in government and the other one in English as second language. They gave me teaching credentials in 5 subjects.
He went on to teach various art subjects due to his success and knowledge as a professional artist at the Pasadena City College and Otis Institute in LA.
I taught drawing, painting, wood carving, those 3 classes at Pasadena City College. From there, I went to Otis Parsons Institute of Fine Art in Los Angeles. I was in charge of the sculpture yard and the wood shop.
After relocating to Oregon, Ken started his own art school where he taught carousel and mask carvings for 24 years to students who came from all over the world to attend. So then you moved to Oregon.
I moved to Oregon, yes.
And when you got to Oregon, you started teaching there?
I started teaching there privately.
And so you were, what, 25?
28.
And how long were you in Oregon?
Until I moved here. As far as I know, it was probably the last school that actually taught carousel carving as a school. We had a 3-story building. The upper layer was all bedrooms. Students would come in from all over the United States, Canada, Hawaii, Australia, and stay right there. And we had a large parking lot that they didn't stay in the building. They brought their RVs and they would stay in our parking lot. The middle floor was a showroom. The bottom floor was 2 massive teaching studios. I also taught mask carving, and carousel animals were done in my studio.
So how many years did you teach in Oregon?
Started teaching in 1989.
And you taught right up to the 2019?
Until I came here.
Ken moved to Nashville in 2019 when his daughter rented a studio space without his knowledge and told him he needed to come to Tennessee to be around his grandkids. What brought you here?
Grandkids. I had already started the carousel. My daughter told me, if you're going to get this thing running, working, you need to come here. I said, no, I'm not coming. So then a few weeks later, she would call up and say, well, you have to come now. And I said, no, I don't have to come. Yeah, oh, yes, you do. I rented a building at the factory. And I said, well, what the heck is a factory? And she rented this place here. And she says, I don't want it sitting there empty. So 2 weeks later, we were here.
For years, Ken has been working on a personal project he started in Oregon involving building his own custom carousel. He and his wife Betty have plans for the carousel to include 11 stationary animals, 20 moving animals, and 2 chariots, one with the compatibility for a wheelchair. It will feature a custom 1012 replica Wurlitzer organ. This unique organ will feature 7 different instruments for the music that will play on the carousel. He still has to have the carousel moved from Oregon to Tennessee.
Brought the animals with me.
And what year was that?
2019.
And so you've been doing art your entire life?
Yes.
And when did you start the carousel horses, and what was the interest in that?
Most of these horses were done in a school that I created in Oregon.
He picked up wood carving after his wife Betty requested he make some carousel rocking horses for his daughter's Christmas presents.
The first animal I carved was for my children when we were in California. We had some lean years as a Christmas present. I would work on their piece after the kids would go to bed at night. It was a carousel. And we had a big, huge freezer box, and we put Christmas wrapping paper with a huge, big bow on top. We started it in weekend of Thanksgiving, and it was done Christmas morning. And you could pick up the box, and I could take the horse out and work on it. Nobody knew. All the kids in the neighborhood went crazy. They'd come over to play with my girls, and they want to know what's in that box. The box was as big as this table. That was the first horse. And then I would take it to different shows and stuff. And somebody came along and says, I got an old carousel. You think you can fix it? Well, they brought me all these pieces of this broken up carousel. There were no books. There was no literature on carousels at that time. And that was in 78. Put that all together. People started seeing it.
Hey guys, thanks for listening. I hope you're enjoying the Creative Push. These artist interviews are a labor of love, but it sure would help if you'd consider supporting this podcast with a small monthly donation to help sustain the work and time it takes for me to produce future episodes. You can click the support button, or you can click the link below in the show notes. Any support is greatly appreciated, and you can cancel at any time. Either way, I'm glad to have you here. Please subscribe and share. Now let's get back to the show. Were any of your parents or relatives creative? Were any of them artists?
My father, he was a painter. Most of them were desert scenes. He loved the desert. He got shot in World War II and was paralyzed. He died in the 60s.
Is there any one thing you wish you had known when you got started that could have helped your career along that you know now?
You can't be lazy, which I have a tendency to be. There's so much to learn. I've learned everything that I do totally on my own. I wish that there were people who would share their knowledge. I find that most woodcarvers do. I find that most painters won't.
That's interesting.
I don't know what they're afraid of. When I teach people, I don't hold anything back.
So how's COVID affected your work?
It affects here because I can't let people in.
You've worked straight through it.
Oh, yeah. I went home for 6 months. I still have my home in Oregon. I have a lot of upkeep there. I have to keep the hay fields cut. And I don't think that I'll spend another summer here. I can't stand the summer. My wife can't even go outside here. It's beautiful here. It's overpopulated. When I first started coming here, 6 years ago now, about half the population that you have now. Franklin was still a little town. Nashville is, I can't even believe what Nashville's done.
Do you consider that you have a specific technique, and if you do, is it something that you could explain?
Detail on my horses is my technique. I like to paint abstract or impressionistic. These paintings you see in here are designed specifically for the carousel.
How long does it take you to complete a horse?
It could take from 6 weeks to 6 months. The little baby giraffe took 1 week to do the drawings, make the patterns, cut it out, glue up all the pieces. 2 weeks to carve it, 5 weeks to paint. The big lion and the chariot took probably a year.
I hear that there's a hidden part of each of your...
The time capsule. Yeah. All my animals. After working on other people's animals, the old restoration work, the only thing I ever found in any of them was a 10-cent ride ticket in one. Every once in a while you find shredded newspaper, and I think that's to absorb moisture. I'm not sure why it's in. And then a petrified rat inside of one. And I decided a long time ago when I started doing carousel animals that I started to keep to put a time capsule in. So there's a time capsule in every animal in here, and it can go from newspaper articles to magazine articles. If I don't have anything to put in, sometimes I'll write a poem, pictures of my kids.
Is there one particular thing that you've put in a time capsule that you feel is your most special gift to someone who will find that later?
I did a horse for an unborn baby in London, and it's actually a rocking horse piggy bank. Inside of it has a time capsule. Got there in time. They wanted it in the nursery before she came home from the hospital. When she is 16 years old, I'm going to call her up and tell her how to get that time capsule out of there. I wrote her a letter, amongst other things that are in it, and I don't remember all the stuff I put in it. Partially it is a 2-page letter to her personally.
That's great.
Mostly things about my family. 9/11 is in one. The Queen Mother died. I happened to be in British Columbia at the time, and I picked up the newspapers from when she died, and I thought that was really something that should be noted. It's in another animal that I happened to be working on at the time.
What is creativity to you? What does it mean to you?
You try to be original, and actually carousel animals aren't original. People did them for 100 years before I started. The reason I started carousels was partially because of my children, and partially because when you go to a gallery, or you go to a museum especially, you can't touch anything. You can't take pictures. You can't. In some places they're actually boarded off. You can't even get close to them. I want to leave something that people can enjoy for at least 100 years. Kids come in here and they get all excited and they run up and they put their hands inside the animals' mouths or stick a hole in the peekaboo or the finger in the peekaboo, rub the stones, look at the eyes. And that's what a carousel can do for young people. I get a lot of older people who come and say, God, I remember the carousel and all these good memories, and they talk about their childhood and the memories they had. That's why we're building a carousel, so that it can be enjoyed for a very long time. We're building a band organ to go with the carousel. My wife has done most of the cabinet work on it and all the stained glass for it, and all I got to do is now start putting it together. We're building a 1912 replica of a Wurlitzer band organ to go on the carousel. It plays 7 different instruments. It's going to be quite unique, quite stunning.
When do you think you'll have that completed?
As soon as I get it out here. It's still in Oregon. These paintings all go on the carousel. They go on the doghouse. The doghouse is the center of the carousel where all the mechanism makes it go up and down.
What inspires you to create?
I think the look on people's faces and the joy that, I can't let people in because of the pandemic now, but just people looking in the windows, and that's very rewarding to an artist. People appreciating your work.
Do you ever get stuck?
Oh, every day.
And what do you do when you get stuck?
Plow through, go back, redo. This is the 3rd trip on that head. I keep changing it. The whole horse is done. I'm waiting to finish that darn head. I've been working 2 weeks just on this segment of the head.
How do people find your work, and how do you go about selling your work?
It's all word of mouth. I do not advertise, ever.
You post on your Instagram and you have a website.
Yes, I have a daughter that does it. I don't even know how to turn on a computer, and I have no desire to ever learn.
Is there any advice that you can offer anyone wanting to start wood carving or painting?
Woodcarvers are very giving. They'll give you inspiration, they'll give you patterns, they'll give you wood, they'll let you borrow tools. And it's something you can pick up after you retire and do well. It's something you can do as a teenager and do well.
Is there a specific kind of wood you would recommend?
Always basswood, sure. That's the carver's dream. Most of these are basswood.
Is there anything else that you'd want to share? Words of wisdom, anything?
No, don't stop. You can't get discouraged. You can't. It's like everything else in life. It's a learning process. So I hope to be a good carver someday, and I'm not there yet. I have a long ways to go, and I'm running out of time. But all you can do is work and do the best you can.
Thank you so much for letting me do this interview with you.
You're welcome.
I visited Ken in his Franklin studio where most of the completed animals can be seen. His shop is located in a retail shopping space known as the Factory.
All artists are kind of hammy anyway. You probably know that.
Thank you so much for listening. As always, my intention is to offer inspiration that excites you to want to get out there and create something amazing. Be sure to check out some of the other episodes. There's more information below in the show notes, including links to other great stories, tips, and resources. Drop me a message or comment at any time, and I hope that you'll sign up to be a part of this creative tribe.